Hey folks, Frank Hablawi of Non-Productive here, and today we have an interview with Deborah Castellano, author of Glamour Magic, a book that promises to help you get what you want out of life. We talk about being other, geopolitics, creeping out your loved ones, and how to win a fight at Panera. Definitely worth a listen. Who are we here with?
I'm Deborah Castellano, and I'm the author of Glamour Magic.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I live in New Jersey, and I'm a bit of a gamer girl, and I like girly pop culture shows, and I also practice witchcraft. So those are probably the big wheelhouses.
That's got to be the thing that draws the most attention. Give us a very high-level overview of what witchcraft is to you.
Well, for me, it's having a relationship with my deities, my ancestors, and my spirits, and working with them to get everyday things accomplished.
Which is the crux of your book, right?
Yes. I talk about glamour, which by the dictionary definition is what makes you interesting and exciting to others, and how to use that both mundanely and magically to accomplish your great work, whatever that thing is that you are trying to accomplish in this lifetime.
Would it be fair to call this a self-help book?
I got called that in a mean review already.
Oh, yeah?
So I don't know. Apparently, we're not supposed to be self-help and witchcraft. Like, it's not supposed to be a melding of the two. But you know what? I think it is a bit, because that's why people have historically turned to magic, is to help themselves.
Why write a book like this at this point in your life?
I guess the easiest way to go with that is I feel like beauty is what you're born with, and glamour is what you do with it, along with a bunch of other traits. And you can't really play with beauty too much. Beauty is determined by factors like how symmetrical your face is, cultural markers, and it changes all the time. What was beautiful in the 90s is not necessarily what's considered beautiful today. And that sounds exhausting, to try to keep up with this ever-changing ideal of beauty, whereas glamour is harder to catch, and it is a bit artificial, and that's what I like about it. If you want eyelashes, why not you? Put on some fake ones. Besides even that, it's also what makes you interesting and exciting to others, and getting to learn how to play with that.
You mentioned that beauty is different than glamour, and that beauty is sort of hard for you to do anything with, to change. And you think that people tend to confuse beauty and glamour and maybe not know what part of themselves or their personalities or their way of facing the world to work on first? Is that sort of an issue?
Yes. Oh my God. I was just fighting with my mother about this at Panera yesterday. Because she was very insistent that I'm doing it wrong. I think here's the thing. I think she thinks of glamour as Marilyn Monroe, those girls who work at Sephora, and that's part of it. Like, they should not be excluded from the party. At the same time, if Marilyn Monroe didn't have that certain something about her in addition to her beauty, she'd probably just be another married housewife.
That's interesting. Yeah. And when you hear people who talk about Marilyn Monroe, people who've actually spent time with her contemporaries at the time, they always speak about this sort of unmeasurable quality that she exuded, that it goes beyond that what you could capture on film or on although you can take a picture of it, you can make a film of it, but it was something more than you couldn't just replicate it by putting it on just another pretty face.
Right. I think like good modern examples would be Tilda Swinton, who she's described herself as looking more like a painting than an actress. And she's got that certain something, whether she's in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe or Only Lovers Left Alive, where you can't stop looking at her. and you want to know what she's going to do, I would say pretty much the whole cast of Orange is the New Black, because these are not women who, for the most part, are conventionally cast. Some of them, of course, like Laura Prepon, more because she's done that 70s show and stuff like that. But the majority of the cast is not in that kind of cookie cutter thing. And that's what I think makes the show so interesting and popular, because these are women who look like women you can know. Their stories are so interesting, and the way the actresses portray them.
Right. And I feel like the thing I'm most interested in about this book, which will help people to realize something about themselves and also is about magic and glamour, is how relatable it is. It's arguing with your mother at a Panera, right? I don't think you could get more relatable to that.
I'm that girl just bringing it down.
Right. So
it's kind of in the blogosphere, a bit of what I'm known for.
Right. You talk about the other, specifically the good witch, the bad witch, occultist, mage, goth, etc., etc. And I feel all those people squarely fit into the site of the book like this, right? But do you think it could also be helpful for people who are, I hate to say the word conventional, but who maybe identify as just geeks?
I think if you're a geek, you're already other. Maybe not quite as overtly so, but I mean, think about, I'm also part of the SCA, which is the Society for Creative Anachronism. And these are people who have, generally speaking, at least in my area, these really crazy high-powered jobs doing all of this really intense stuff. And on the weekends, they like to get together and beat each other up with rattan swords. They also learn things like cooking and calligraphy and sewing and all sorts of other stuff too. But there's no... Like, you put on the outfit, you do those medieval things that you're personally interested in, but you're not putting on a character. So, I mean, I would say that's kind of other. I know a lot of people who are part of the SCA and not particularly out at work about it, because saying, I really want to go play in the woods for 1 to 2 weeks is something hard for a lot of people to understand.
Right.
I think whenever you get really deeply invested in a culture, whether it be tabletop RPG, whether it be video gaming, whether it be cosplay or anime, you're starting to become a little other, because it's a little harder for, say, again, your mom to relate to you.
Yes. I mean, then you end up saying that you're going camping for the weekend and never actually addressing the fact that you've got a foam sword and period armor.
Right, exactly. And, you know, when you're going to go cosplay as Sailor Moon, you say, oh, I'm going to this thing with my friends, you know?
And at the same time, I think we've all, those of us who've experienced a level of otherness, have gotten really good, especially as you get older, at concealing or justifying or even rationalizing it for the people we're talking to. So I've myself described cosplay as it's basically, it's Halloween. It's a costume party. Yeah. It's a costume party at a convention, which is true. I think that's fair, but it also is an attempt to normalize something that I don't know if this book necessarily thinks is something we should be doing, or that you think that's something we should be doing.
I have so many mixed feelings about that on a personal level. On one hand, I feel like we should get to be who we are. On the other hand, how we survive is by camouflaging a bit and by coming up with sound bites and by finding a way to explain, hey, it's okay that I just, was up all night gaming with my friends. It was a really good time, I do think a certain amount of camouflage is needed. At the same time, I think it's all about learning how to present it, like you said, like finding a way to make it accessible to others. And you can keep it to yourself, the good parts, you know what I mean? Like for instance, a lot of people in the SCA tend to make a lot of mead and beer and cordials and stuff, and it tends to be also a really big party. Many cons tend to be a really big party after hours, and you don't have to get into all the little ifs and whens of all of that, or even like if, again, you're a cosplayer and the judge knocked this point off for this and blah, 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 like you can choose whether or not to share that, whether you think that's going to make it more understandable and more accessible to others, or if it's going to make them look at you more suspiciously.
To get a little bit personal here, how have loved ones reacted when you've tried some of those social experiments you suggest in the book on them?
I've done the primary social experiment I can think of, one that basically goes, if you want to see how other you actually are, offer to work on someone for a loved one, someone who's bothering your loved one, and don't qualify it with all of the usual qualifications most witches and pagans tend to use, which is, positive energy only, white light only. If you kind of leave it open that, hey, maybe we're not going that route, people usually back up real fast. And it's not about you would actually, harness the dark arts here, to avenge your family member from being ill-treated at the grocery store. It's seeing what they'll do with that information. And I've offered it to several family members and some of my closest friends, and inevitably they all say no.
Wow. Yeah, reading that part of the book made me step back and question what I would do. And it was a little uncomfortable. Right? I was like,
you can't ignore that whole spectrum of that.
And then the next step, of course, is to try to extrapolate that to everyone else. Like, what would I do if a Christian person would come up to me and say they would pray for me? And I try to remix it. And I'm like, there's just your mind does fill in the blanks when given the opportunity. And when we talk about ourselves as being unbiased, I think we don't realize that, you're unbiased given the best case scenario, given the best situation with all the qualifiers being provided for you. You can maybe be unbiased.
Right. I'm sure if I said, hey, I know one of your parents is sick, could I light a candle for them? You'd probably be like, yeah, sure, whatever. But if I was like, you want me to fix that? You'd probably ask a few more questions. And people think of, for instance, usually in Catholicism, because that's where my religion I was raised in, and people think, oh, you're praying to Jesus for all this stuff. I know family members who have walked into a church to light a candle to deal with someone that they were not doing well with, and had results from that. So there's all of this in almost every religion. You'll find a little bit of folkiness where you're like, take care of my situation.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you find the hardest part of making these changes in yourself? Some of the changes that you're suggesting in the book. For me, and just to answer my own question, I feel like it was the part where you're trying to discover what it is you want. That first step seems like it's the biggest challenge.
For a lot of people, it totally is. One of my mentors, Norma, would say, you have to want it with a capital W. And a lot of people want things, a pedicure, a trip, a slightly better job, a slightly better car, to meet a nice significant other. To want something with that kind of single-minded focus, that's something that people need a moment to really think about. And for a lot of people I know that's the hardest part for them. For me, it wasn't so much that. I have wanted to have a full book since I was 7 years old. So I've got kind of that single-minded tunnel vision and kind of going on for myself that part was not a problem. For me, what I've had to adjust to is finally accomplishing things. I'm fine getting rejected. You can reject me a million times. I'll get right back up. I'll send it out 7 more times. I don't care. But as soon as there's contracts and deadlines and all of the things that need to get done, that's what I struggle with. From a slightly more in-depth perspective of the book, it's the austerity. When I was writing this book, I was doing it in my day job. I work for an accounting firm, and tax season is this whole thing. And we work very long hours during that time, and we work 6, sometimes 7 days a week. And I would do that. I would go home. I would write. I would go to bed. I would do it again. It was very chop wood, carry water. And that was really hard for me. And I would make it even harder for myself by occasionally being like, okay, well, for the next 3 weeks, I'm not going to ingest any alcohol, even in a social situation, or I'm not going to eat any red meat this week, or whatever, just to see what it did. And it definitely does something, which is why I think it's so much a part of many world religions.
The fast, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think in modern witchy circles, that is very no, 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 no. We gave that up on purpose, to not have to give things up. And I get that, man. I mean, I like the party as much as everyone else, but sometimes, like, you have to see what lives inside that hollow.
Right. What do you think about somebody whose want is considerably larger in scope? I know that's a subjective concept.
Like world domination, something like...
I was thinking world peace, but world domination works too. I guess that works. That's one way of getting world peace.
Yes, everyone do as I say, yeah. World peace is lovely. I think that's nice too. Either case, either way we're looking at it, I think the issue comes in that you have to control a lot of factors for that to happen, like a lot of factors. In the book, I talk about how you're trying to sort of learn how to take your local factors, your friends, your family, the people who want to help you, also people you're going to meet, coworkers, etc., and how you can try to kind of cobble together a network to help you, because it's really hard to do anything completely by yourself. I would think for there to be world peace, there's a lot of uncontrolled factors in that situation. You're talking many, many circles past your circles. I think that's why it's easier to do certain things that require like 6 degrees of separation. Once you get past that 6 degrees of separation, it's a lot harder to realistically affect the situation, especially because you've got everyone else with the dog in the race, so to speak.
Right.
There are other people who want to be in charge of the world. There are other people who are probably better connected, better money, more political, have more alliances that could make that happen. And you're kind of going up against them, so to speak.
Right. Maybe start off with peace in your household and then expand out. Right.
That's very good targeting.
Right.
Right. Because, whether it be because you have kids who are at whatever age where they're hating your face, whether it be your spouse and you are having that same argument you've been having for the last 5 to 10 years, and it's that time again for that discussion to happen, and it just sort of makes everything unhappy. It is easier to be like, okay, what can I do to smooth things out with my spouse? What can I do to have a better relationship with my child? And it should never, and any witch worth her salt would tell you, it should never be completely magic based, because it's like waiting around to win the lottery. Yeah, it could happen, but it's not really a great way to go about it. So you want to have both the practical and the magical aspect of that. There's lots of magical things you could do. You could cleanse your house with sage. You could put Florida water on your doorways. You could do some meditation to clear things out a bit. You could try to have a romantic night out with your spouse where you guys can really connect and not fight with each other.
That's great advice. That's great advice. And it seems like it's something that we can probably all achieve, at least steps towards that.
I mean, when you start talking about witchcraft, people get freaked out, and I can understand that. But most of what most witches I know do are really pretty small things that anyone who is deeply involved in their faith would do. Whether it be prayers, whether it be small magics, whether it's a bunch of little things. It's not usually, although some people do, but not usually like, I'm going to clear the dining room and have a 4-hour ritual. Most people don't have time for that.
Even witches have lots of things to do in their schedule. They've got a budget.
There's lots of stuff.
Of course. Are there any special challenges in guiding people in the current political climate, this perceived high tension world we are now in?
I do think basically, since we're being bombarded 24/7 with CNN, with social media, like you can't turn it off. And I think that an ability that many of us have to turn it off for at least just a little while, an hour or two, I think it makes it hard to accomplish these great works we're trying to achieve just because we're so overwhelmed by everything. I think the flip side of that is because of social media, people are able to see other people living lives that maybe they wouldn't have seen before that and being happy and successful at it, and it makes it less scary. Like, I've seen it with older people all the time that, these are all really scary concepts to them, whether it be same-sex marriage, whether it be, again, the pagany, wiccany kind of thing, but, they see it being portrayed in a reasonable manner on television, and suddenly it's a lot less scary, it's a lot less threatening. So there's that aspect for it too. Degrassi was covering refugee issues this season. So, I mean, when you have a frame to look at it, it makes it much more approachable.
Speaking of approachable, you brought up Degrassi, you brought up Orange is the New Black, you brought up Panera. So the book is incredibly approachable. One of my favorite aspects of the book is when you go into some of your favorite historical badasses.
Yes.
Can you give us at least one name drop here and why you love them so much?
Okay. Yeah, I love talking about medieval women because they were knocking over empires and doing all this crazy stuff when they weren't even supposed to be considered people per se. So I'm like, it's hard not to feel invincible with an iPhone,
Right.
Like, what can't we do? So let's see. Oh gosh, it's always so hard to pick because there are so many favorites. Let's go with Joan of Arc for today, because Joan managed to get pretty far until, unfortunately, she didn't get as far. So basically with Joan of Arc, she started getting these visions and prophecies and stuff like that. And she's like, oh, hey, I would really like to go help the King of France beat England because he's not doing so great with that. And everyone's like, you're just a girl from the country. What do you know? And she's like, no, it's true. Like, I should probably be at home chilling with my mom, doing country girl things, mending socks and whatnot. But I've got all these visions that are happening. So you really have to get me to the king. And she goes through all of these sort of processes to get to the king. She starts convincing a few of the local guards, like, no, for real, I know what's going to happen. Let's get this going. And then she convinces the captain of her town's guard. And eventually she sees the king and gives him a few prophecies that makes him take it seriously. Facts that I love about Joan that aren't really always so well known is she was able to get as far as she did because there were a lot of aristocratic women who financially backed her.
Oh,
they were like, like, we have all this money because we're widows or never married or whatever. And I didn't realize you were going to do all this cool stuff, Joan. So here, let me give you a bucket of money to do that. And when they held her hostage for a time, she actually jumped out a window into a dry moat to try to escape. Like, she took arrows to the neck and to the thighs and just like nuts. And she didn't fight. She was a banner holder. And she did get the king properly anointed and on his throne and all of that. But, unfortunately, the tide turned at that point. But considering she started out as just a country farm girl and then got to the courts of France, and after all of her battles and everything, they were like, no, Joan, just like, hang out, chill, be cool, just be a lady at court. And she's like, oh God, no, I don't want to do that. Like, I thought we were going to be like epic guys, and really, really win a bunch of stuff. And they're like, no, let's just eat and drink and, be cool. And she's like, I don't want to be cool. And that was probably part of the issue, too, with her eventually winding up burnt at the stake. But she was sort of the kickoff for the War of the Roses, which is many of the women that I follow in my book.
Right. And this book will help you get to the point where Joan was at right before it turned for her and help you navigate through that turn so that you will not be metaphorically or physically burnt at the stake. I believe that's, put that in the back cover. Deb, I know you're in the middle of the book tour, or at least the pre-book tour, so all our listeners want to follow you. Where can we find out more about your work, this book, and everything else going on?
Absolutely. My blog is Charmed, I'm Sure, and that's at charmedfinishingschool.com. My shop is The Mermaid and the Crow, and you can find that at mermaidandcrow.com. I can be found on Twitter, being a delinquent, under Ms. Deb Castellano. I can be found on Facebook under Deborah.Castellano.
Great. Thank you very much. Best of luck with the book, although you don't need luck because you know where you're going. You've got the glamour.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really fun.
Thank you again.
This has been a non-productive media presentation. Executive producer, Frank Hablawi. This program and many others like it on the Non-Productive Network is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. Please share it, but ask before trying to change it or sell it. For more information, visit non-productive.com.